Sometimes life just feels too noisy. Too many things, too much rushing, too many I need to have this moments, until we end up forgetting the simplest and most essential thing of all, to simply be. What I'm about to tell you right now might completely change the way you see what truly matters. There's something inside you that's quietly asking for calm, for space, for silence, and maybe, just maybe, Japanese minimalism is exactly what your heart has been trying to express, not as a way of eliminating, but as a way of revealing. Today, I want to show you 7 deep transformations that Japanese minimalism can bring into your life. This isn't about theory or abstract concepts, it's about you. It's about how you feel when you walk into your home, about the peace you're longing for, and the clarity that's been buried under all that excess. I know how it feels to live in crowded spaces and carry heavy thoughts, but there is a gentler, softer, and more human way to live, and it begins the moment you learn to let go of what's unnecessary. If you feel ready to welcome this kind of change, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Transformation. 1. Calm returns. When you begin to simplify, something quiet starts to happen. The rush begins to lose its grip. The mind, once constantly occupied, starts to settle down. Japanese minimalism teaches that living calmly doesn't mean living slowly. It means living presently. The Japanese understand that tranquility isn't found in rest, but in the intention behind everything you do. Washing a cup, making your bed, folding your clothes, each can become an act of mindfulness. And it's within this presence that true peace begins to take shape. Maybe you've noticed how the fast pace of daily life drains your energy without you even realizing it. You do. You answer. You solve. You run. And at the end of the day, you feel like you haven't really lived. But when you start doing less, with more attention, life naturally begins to slow down. Not because everything around you has changed, but because you have changed inside. In Japan, there's a deep respect for the small pauses in life. They know that stillness is part of rhythm, that calm isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. When you start allowing moments of silence, you begin to notice that your mind starts breathing again. And in that breath, the body finds balance, the thoughts become clearer, and the heart finds peace. Japanese minimalism doesn't demand that you hurry. It simply invites you to be here now, not lost in what's missing, not burdened by what's too much. Calm returns when you stop chasing perfection and start listening to the quiet sound of your own life. And it's in this state of lightness that your surroundings begin to change too, naturally, gently, almost as if the space itself had been waiting for you to slow down enough to truly see it. Transformation. 2. The mind finds calm. When your surroundings become simple, your mind begins to breathe again. The excess of objects, colors, sounds, and tasks creates a kind of invisible noise, the kind you don't really notice, but you feel. It's what makes you lose focus, get irritated over small things, and feel drained without knowing exactly why. Japanese minimalism holds a deep relationship with silence. Not the silence of sound, but the silence of the soul. When you remove what's unnecessary, you create inner space. And it's in that space that the mind finally finds rest. You begin to think with greater clarity, make decisions with greater ease, and slowly distance yourself from the constant urgency the modern world demands. Doesn't seem so pressing anymore. And what truly matters stands out with perfect clarity. In Japan, this mental calm is nurtured through the smallest gestures. A cup of tea poured slowly, a window opened just enough for the wind to drift in, a clean corner where one can simply be. These moments are not wasted time, they are nourishment for the spirit. A quiet mind sees more clearly, and when it finds stillness, the whole body responds with balance. You begin to notice how external simplicity creates internal serenity. That's how Japanese minimalism transforms not only your space, but also the way you think and feel. And when the mind finds peace, something curious happens. Time itself seems to change. It softens. It feels more generous. The rush loses its meaning because you start to experience life moment by moment, not in the speed of it, but in the depth of it. What once was chaos now becomes rhythm, and what once was pressure becomes presence. That's when you realize that calm isn't the absence of movement. It's the art of moving with grace. Transformation. 3. Space gains meaning. When calm returns, you begin to see your surroundings with new eyes. Suddenly, what once went unnoticed becomes meaningful. The space around you starts to reflect what exists within you. Japanese minimalism teaches that every object should have a purpose, and when it doesn't, it takes up more than just space. It takes up energy. That's why Japanese homes are simple, quiet, and filled with significance. Nothing is there by accident. Every piece carries a story, a function, and a sense of respect. When you start applying this to your own life, something begins to shift inside your home. The air feels lighter, the corners feel more alive, and even the silence feels warmer. You find joy in looking at what remains, because everything that remains has a reason to be there. The space stops being just a background. It becomes a part of your peace. Sometimes holding on to too much is a form of fear. Fear of needing, fear of lacking, fear of losing. But Japan teaches the opposite. True value isn't in accumulation, it's in care. And when you care for what you have, your home gives harmony back to you. A clean, organized space is not about aesthetics, it's about emotional balance. It's about waking up and feeling that everything around you supports your serenity. Your home stops being a storage of things and becomes a living presence that listens to you, welcomes you, and gently teaches you about simplicity. In this way, space gains a heartbeat, not through what fills it, but through what it allows you to feel. Transformation. 4. Time regains its value. When the mind becomes calm, time begins to reveal itself. You start to notice how much of your life has been spent running, as if living were a sequence of tasks to complete, not a space to feel. Japanese minimalism teaches that living well isn't about doing more, it's about being fully present in each moment. The Japanese treat time as something sacred. They don't measure it only in hours, but in presence. Drinking tea, walking quietly, admiring a simple flower arrangement, these are all moments of time lived with purpose. And that awareness completely transforms the way you perceive your day. When you remove the excess, time begins to expand, but it's not the kind of extra time that belongs to those who have nothing to do. It's the kind that belongs to those who have finally learned how to breathe. Life stops being a race and begins to find its rhythm. You wake without the weight of urgency pressing against your chest and start to savor the pauses that once felt like wasted minutes. And it's in those pauses that something profound takes place. The clock stops being your enemy. The hours grow lighter and the present moment becomes enough. Japan teaches that you don't need to fill every instant. You simply need to live it with awareness. And when that happens, time regains its true worth. The lightness of well-lived time begins to shape the way you see everything else. It teaches you to make choices more consciously, to respect the rhythm of your own pace, and to be intentional about what you allow into your life. The gift of time becomes a reminder. Value doesn't come from quantity, but from presence. And in this stillness, you start to feel that the most meaningful moments are often the quietest ones. Transformation. 5. Consumption becomes conscious. Once you learn to value calm and time, everything around you starts to carry a different weight. Consumption stops being automatic and becomes intentional. Every object, every purchase, every choice gains attention. Japanese minimalism isn't about having less for the sake of less. It's about choosing better what enters your life. You begin to understand that you don't need everything you want. You only need what makes sense. Things stop being distractions and start becoming extensions of your well-being. What remains in your home is what truly matters, and what's left over, what only took up space, can leave without guilt. The Japanese call this respect for space, for objects, for the moment, and most importantly, for yourself. When you choose consciously, life becomes lighter. There's no rush, no excess, no guilt. Every decision is made with presence, and that presence brings peace. And within that awareness, something beautiful happens. You begin to see the beauty of imperfection. When everything in your home has been chosen with care, small marks and subtle flaws no longer bother you. They become part of the story, part of the character and truth of each object, each moment, each quiet corner of your life. Japanese minimalism reminds you that beauty doesn't come from perfection, but from connection, from how you relate to what surrounds you, from how you treat what you have, and from how gently you move through the world. When consumption becomes conscious, your possessions stop defining you. Instead, they begin to reflect the peace you've chosen to live with. Transformation. 6. The beauty of imperfection. Japanese minimalism teaches us something we often forget. Perfection isn't required for beauty to exist. In fact, true beauty reveals itself through imperfection. A crack in the ceramic, a stain on the fabric, a mark on the wooden table. Everything carries a story. Everything holds meaning. When you begin to accept these small imperfections, something shifts within you. That constant pressure for everything to be flawless begins to fade, replaced by a deep and gentle sense of appreciation. You start to value what's real, what's lived, what's authentic. This change doesn't just transform your home, it transforms your heart. You begin to accept yourself more fully, to see others with greater compassion, and even your own mistakes stop feeling like failures and start looking like lessons. In this way, Japanese minimalism becomes an act of liberation. It teaches that lightness doesn't come from what you remove, but from what you recognize as true and sufficient. And it's within this acceptance of reality, the raw, imperfect, human reality, that we arrive at the most profound transformation of all, the change that happens within. Transformation. 7. The inner self transforms. After all these shifts, something greater begins to unfold. You realize that Japanese minimalism doesn't only transform your home, your objects, or your time, it transforms you. The silence, the clarity, the awareness, the lightness, they all begin to accumulate quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you notice that the way you feel, the way you live, the way you breathe, has changed. Your heart opens itself to what is simple, essential, and truly meaningful. Worries lose their heaviness. Your spaces gain a new sense of purpose, and life begins to flow at a gentler, more human rhythm. You understand that you don't need excess to feel complete. True freedom lies in consciously choosing what deserves to remain in your life. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this. This transformation isn't forced. It isn't about perfection or effort. It's life itself showing you, softly and slowly, that less can truly be more. That peace isn't found in having everything, but in realizing that what you already have is enough. That the essential has always been sufficient. These 7 transformations don't require speed or perfection. They happen gradually, each one in its own time, like a quiet breeze that arrives without noise. Japanese minimalism isn't merely an external practice, it's a reflection of what you feel inside. The calm, the meaningful space, the peaceful mind, the valued time, the conscious consumption, the acceptance of imperfection, and the inner transformation, all of these form a single path back to yourself. When you choose to simplify, you're not giving up on life. You're creating space to feel it. You're allowing lightness to enter, clarity to settle, and every moment to be lived with attention and meaning. And this change doesn't have to be dramatic or immediate. It begins in the care for what you keep, in the joy of doing less with greater presence, in the silent gratitude for the smallest details. Japanese minimalism teaches that true wealth isn't in what you accumulate, but in what you preserve as essential: peace, clarity, and the freedom to live each instant fully. If these transformations spoke to something inside you, if you feel the desire to live with greater lightness and intention, comment below. I choose to live with intention and lightness. And remember, every simple gesture, every mindful choice, every organized space is a quiet declaration of self-care. The change begins now in what you decide to keep and in what you allow to let go. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to share and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any new content, and you'll help me continue bringing you more reflections and practical inspiration for a lighter, more intentional life. See you in the next video.